Hello again, Scott Bach, Executive Director, Association of New Jersey Rifle and Pistol Clubs, and a former member of law enforcement. Like I said before, everyone agrees that not everybody should have access to firearms. How you deal with that situation is where we part company. And when dealing with suspension of somebody's fundamental constitutional right, it is really important that there be certain basic protections there. One of them is called due process. We all know what that is. It's notice and an opportunity to be heard. The other is that there has to be fairness to it. Unfortunately, despite our testimony over the last several months, this bill still contains a provision that fails to give advance due process. So the first time that somebody whose Second Amendment or fundamental constitutional rights are on the chopping block, the first time they find out is when their door is kicked in by the police who are saying, "We're here for your guns." Now, so the other thing is that allegations that can be made in this process are completely unchallenged. So you have somebody who could fabricate allegations that result in suspension of somebody's fundamental constitutional rights without an opportunity to be heard in advance. And due process delayed is due process denied. Now, there is a premise behind this legislation, and it's a false premise. That premise is that in an emergency, there is currently, I say I have 1 minute. If I could, I'm on the bill. I'm just asking for the full 4 minutes on this bill, if I may, Madam Chair.
I think this was, 3 minutes? All right.
I'll wrap up as quickly as I...
We'll give you the additional...
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. So, so there is a premise behind this bill, and the premise is that there is not currently a process for dealing with an emergency, and that is false. There is a process that currently exists for dealing with a true emergency, and that's called 911. The police have expanded powers in a true emergency. They have something known as community caretaking standards, and there's the exigent circumstances standard, which I'm sure you remember from law school, okay, where Fourth Amendment, and this is all constitutional, it's been ironed out, police have expanded powers in a true emergency. And so let's look at this for a second. So in a true emergency, you think, okay, my neighbor is about to do something terrible, okay, and he's about to do it now. Do I, A, write up an affidavit, run into court, marshal my evidence, argue to the judge, and hope that the judge maybe does something or gets around to doing something? Or B, do I dial 911 and let the police deal with it right now? Okay, so you have to ask, if there is enough time to run into court, there is enough time, or isn't there enough time to give somebody due process? Okay, if we're writing up affidavits and we're making arguments and we're going to the court, it's not a true emergency, okay, because we have a process and a procedure for that. The only other thing I want to say is New Jersey will be the outlier with this bill. There are other bills in the United States, in other states that have been introduced, and they provide advanced due process, and they also provide a punishment for somebody for making false allegations. The most recent one was introduced in Arizona just last week, and it makes it a felony for somebody to have somebody's Second Amendment rights suspended based on false allegations. So with that said, it would be a very easy matter for us to give advanced due process. It would be a very easy matter for us to give due process. Okay, so with that, that concludes my testimony. Thank you for the indulgence.
Senator Logano?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bach, for your testimony. What happens currently in the non-domestic violence situation where the example you gave, where your neighbor maybe said something crazy or is exhibiting some strange behavior, you call 911, the police show up, ends up they got 5 shotguns sitting in their garage. We're trying to get to the heart of what do we do with these situations? You know, how do we afford people due process? I agree with you, people deserve due process. And there should be some mechanism in place for removal and return, or, you know, and what do we do exactly with these people? So without this proposed legislation aside, what happens in those situations where the police will go in, if the guy's acting erratically, they bring him in, they see the guns in the garage, they will remove the firearms from the garage for safety concerns. So where does that person now go going forward? I mean,
Okay.
How's that person afforded due process? What happens to their guns?
Okay, so the first thing is, okay, you think your neighbor's about to do something terrible. Okay, you dial 911. The police have the power. It's recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court. They have expanded powers in the times of a true emergency to do whatever is necessary to stop the emergency in process. So if that means that they come into a house, if that means that they search for firearms and remove them to stop a true emergency, there is already a body of law that says in a true emergency it is constitutional to go through that process. After that process, of course, it has to all be sorted out. Okay, and that is when there will be hearings and notices, and everybody will, very much like in the domestic violence setting, where when there's a call, the police show up and they leave with all the firearms and you sort it out later. It would be very similar to that. But
well, in that situation, if the person is taken in and just is exhibiting some signs of erratic behavior, they're examined by a mental health professional, and at that point the mental health professional says this person's had a breakdown, they need to be institutionalized, this person needs to be monitored. What happens to their firearms in this situation going forward? I mean, are we kind of now leaving it to really just, the whims of the courts and the police department? And isn't there really no clear path on where the person would go going forward? Let's say 3 months later they get out, or they're feeling better. Now all of a sudden, who has the guns? How do they get the guns back?
I think it would be a court process. I mean, there is a court process for doing that right now, and if there's an adjudication over somebody's mental health in that moment, the court would properly dispose of that on a case-by-case basis based on the particular facts and circumstances. The problem is when you try to create a one-size-fits-all solution that doesn't include basic protections like advanced due process or easily protecting against abuse of the system, then you have to ask, why is that? And the question we ask is, this tool could easily be used, weaponized, I like to say, for example, in a contentious divorce, or in any other setting where you don't happen to like that person. If there's no penalty, if there's no check on it, this is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's actually a slanted solution.
Could that happen now?
Sure it could, but the difference is you haven't legitimized it. Okay? In other words, it's punishable under contempt of court. This creates legitimacy for it when you could easily put an amendment in here that says, listen, we don't want to take away somebody's rights based on false allegations. Why that's not here after months of testimony, I can only guess at the reason. Thank you very much. Thank you for the indulgence, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I do want to say, you made some very interesting points. I'm sure you've tried to talk with the sponsor.
Of course.
You have sort of an opportunity here because there are going to be these additional amendments made. The bill isn't quite ready yet based on what we heard today from the judiciary. So perhaps there's an additional opportunity to try to talk about this.
If I can take the opportunity, there's two things that would address what I've testified about. One is making sure there is advanced due process in every procedure under this bill, and the other would be criminalizing false allegations made to suspend somebody's rights. That wouldn't make the bill necessarily palatable, but it would eliminate those constitutional objections. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're being asked if these amendments are all the amendments. My understanding is that the AOC has additional ones where they will go to the sponsor, so the bill could turn out eventually to look different than this, a little different. But there's lots of amendments here that were in the assembly, plus the ones that were discussed today that, right.
Okay. On motion. Senator Bateman.
I'm going to abstain because I wouldn't see all the amendments. I want to speak to the sponsors about some of the issues that were raised.
Senator Sack was in an affirmative vote. Senator Bryan.
Yes.
Senator Lagana.
I'm going to vote yes to remove the committee, but I do agree that the bill still needs some work. There are a lot of procedural issues I see with this piece of legislation, and I think that needs to be tightened up before it goes for a vote. Thank you.
Yes, we're all mentioning that we all do have some concerns. We'd like to see the sponsor work out before the bill is final.
Senator Bateman.
Yes.
Bills are released as needed.